So, what if one of the world's fastest growing economies could just unlock this massive source of clean energy that's been hiding in plain sight all along? Today, we're going to dive into a technology that could totally redefine power generation for India. And you know what? The answer is literally floating right on the surface. We often think of clean energy as this big trade-off, right? It's like you're forced to choose between development and the environment. We all picture these huge solar farms eating up valuable land. But what if it didn't have to be that way? This idea suggests there's a whole new path forward, one where clean energy can actually coexist with industry and our vital water resources. And that brings us to this whole new idea of solar coexistence. And let's be super clear here. This is not some sci-fi futuristic concept. No way. This tech is here, it's now, and it's already being put to work. Want proof? Just look at Toledo City in the Philippines. They've already built and are running a megawatt-scale floating solar plant. This is not some tiny little experiment, folks. It's a real-world example generating some serious power right on top of industrial water bodies. Okay, so if it's already working in the Philippines, your mind immediately goes to, what about India, right? But hold on. Before we get too carried away with all the possibilities, we've got to tackle the single most obvious question. And here it is. This is the big one, isn't it? India is a massive country with just colossal energy needs. So is this floating solar thing just a cool but kind of niche idea? Or does the country actually have enough water surface to make a real, meaningful dent in its energy goals? That's the key. Well, this brings us to what might just be India's greatest untapped asset. And the answer to that huge question? It's all in the numbers. So the answer isn't a maybe or, well, it's complicated. Nope. It is a straight up resounding yes. India absolutely has the water surface it needs for a massive scale up. The only question now is just how massive. Let's get into these numbers. All right, let's start with just the sheer number of potential spots. Get this. The data shows India has over 2.42 million mapped water bodies. That's just an astonishing number. It's kind of hard to even wrap your head around it. And when you add all of those up, the rivers, canals, ponds, reservoirs, the whole shebang, you get a total inland water surface area of about 82,000 square kilometers. That is a huge canvas to work with. Okay, so to put that number, 82,000 square kilometers, into perspective for you, that's about 2.7% of India's total land area. Now, I know 2.7% might sound like a small number, but don't let that fool you. In absolute terms, it is a vast, massive surface just sitting there, ready for a new purpose. So what kind of water are we actually talking about here? Well, it's a pretty diverse mix. You've got tons of ponds and tanks. They're the most numerous by far. But the real sweet spot, especially for the big utility-scale projects, the kind that can power whole cities, that's the country's vast reservoirs and lakes. They've got those large, calm surfaces that are just perfect for this tech. So, here's the bottom line from all that data. India has tens of thousands of square kilometers of calm, usable water. And here's the kicker. A lot of these spots are already located right near cities and existing power grids. That is a huge strategic advantage right there. Okay, so we've established the resource is there. It's huge and it's in all the right places. But now for the really practical question. How do you actually turn all that water surface into, watts of electricity? Well, the math here is actually surprisingly simple. There's kind of this global standard for it. It takes about 1 to 1.5 hectares of water, think roughly 2.5 to 4 acres, to generate 1 megawatt of solar power. Now hang on to that figure because it is the key that's going to unlock this whole calculation. All right, so here's how we put it all together. First, you start with that massive resource, 82,000 square kilometers. Then let's be super conservative, right? Let's just assume we only use a tiny fraction of that, say just 5 to 10% of the suitable spots. And finally, we apply that power density formula we just talked about. So, what does that get us? And this brings us to the final, and honestly, the most stunning part of this whole thing. The result of that calculation, it's not just some small upgrade. We're talking about a potential revolution. When you run those conservative numbers, the result is just staggering. We are not talking about a few extra megawatts here and there to help out the grid. No, we are talking about hundreds of gigawatts of realistic, achievable floating solar potential. For India's growing economy, that is a truly game-changing amount of clean energy. So, the takeaway here is crystal clear. The tech is proven, the resource is vast, and it's just waiting. India's clean energy future could literally be floating right on top of its millions of water bodies. And that just leaves us with one final big question. What's the next step to turn all of this incredible potential into a reality?